So welcome today. We're going to run through our CAPPS tool. So this is one of our updating tools to help update P6, making updating P6 much easier. You've got me tonight. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald Associates. I'm coming to you today from Calgary. And I'll do the intro and the actual presentation on the software. So we'll do a deep dive on the software. So let's start with a quick poll. How do you do updating in P6? So updating in P6 is one of the key things that you need to do. Not all of our clients always do it. So some of you may answer, we don't update. But a lot of people might do updates in a meeting, especially if they've got a third party. They might use Excel files. They might receive XCRs from contractors. You might get notes emailed to you from the job site. Okay, so I'm expecting a mixed bag of answers from whoever would feel like answering. So you can go ahead and do that and I'll share the results. So it's going to be quite a variety. And it really just depends on your circumstances. Now, one of the weaknesses we find, unfortunately, is if you don't update your projects, you may be missing out on really understanding where some complexity is happening, some problems are coming in. So it's not a great idea to not update your schedule, okay? Because it's not easy to keep track of all the items going on, especially in the more complicated projects we're dealing with different coordination, different funding sources, different folks with different specialties. So you might have a very small company helping you with very large companies. So updating is really important, but often people don't do it because it's difficult, or they don't do it as often as they want to, or would really be beneficial for the project. Because we've got lots of different folks. We've got maybe multiple systems, different software tools that people use. So that makes it hard to share data. So getting the updates may not be that easy. And timely updates are really important. It helps your team make good decisions as to what they should be focusing on if priorities are changing. So Emerald has built a few different tools for updating to streamline that process. So tonight we're going to work on CAPPS. I'm going to show you CAPPS, but we also have another one called TAPPS, which is the fastest, absolute fastest way to do updating, but it uses a barcode scanner. So our turnaround clients particularly use that, but some of our construction contractors who want to allow folks in the field to do barcode scanning updates, they're exploring those options as well. So it's not just for turnarounds or shutdowns, outages. It definitely can be used for many things. But tonight we're going to look at CAPPS. And we also have some of our clients who use our P6 loader, so our Excel loading. Okay, so that is another tool. And of course, we also sell the Oracle team member. So those are all options. But tonight I'm going to show you the CAPPS tool. Now, the key thing here is we want to make updating easier. We want it to be faster. And we want it also to be able to be done, not necessarily by the P6 people in your company. It could be done by a third party. If you give them access, all you need is an API license and the CAPPS license. So for less than $50 a month, you can get updates coming from a lot of participants on the project, which could make or break decision making. It could really have a big influence on your decision making if you can get your updates done more often. So that's a big thing. So that leads me to the second question I wanted to ask. How often is your team doing the updates? Now, of course, some of you answered we don't, so might get a few we don't, but it's going to depend again on your project types, okay? So if you're doing monthly updates on a long capital project, that's good, but weekly would be much better if you could do that. Daily is even better. but for sure daily would be bare bones minimum if you're in a turnaround or outage type of project. Okay, so again, we've got a variety of answers there for those who wanted to share. So the whole thing here is we're trying to get the updating to be done more often, okay? Because in 4 weeks, you could easily have many things that shift on your critical path. So the whole objective here of CAPPS is to get a tool in your team's hands that will let you update faster, more often, okay? So that you're getting updates more timely and giving your decision-making team access to better data more often, okay? That's really the objective. So CAPPS is a tool that can be deployed on-premise within your network environment if you wish. We also host it up in our cloud, so you can have a hybrid. And you could also have your P6 up in the Emerald cloud or a different cloud. So we can deploy it many different ways. The way that it works, you're going to see it's a very simple solution. It's web-based, so you don't have to install anything on your computer. It's tabular. So that's the main thing that we wanted. We wanted a user interface that was highly accommodating, could give you lots of fields if you need them, or very simple if you need them, so that the updating that you need for your project is going to be accommodated. The security is controlled through P6, so we take advantage of P6. We use the API license, so it's not a full-blown P6 license that's needed. If you deploy it, let's say, to an engineering company that's going to update all the engineering work, for example, you could just get them an API license and a CAPPS license and secure it that way. Okay, so in terms of security, we're taking advantage of P6 built-in functionality already. And from there, they can do updating at any time. So it's self-serve. So whatever the scheduler is doing in the schedule is automatically going to be served up to the user in CAPPS with some security settings, some filters, and I'm going to show you how that works, so that they can do the updates, they can submit it, and the approvals can either be done in CAPPS if you need a project manager, let's say, to review it first, or it can go straight into P6 and then the scheduler can review it, okay? So we have both methods depending on which way you want to do it. And then in terms of looking at the data, reviewing it, looking at any deviations, we take full advantage of P6 for all of that. So I'm going to show you that, okay? We use user-defined fields, we use codes, we use flags for you to be able to just use P6 the way you're used to, but with this additional functionality that CAPPS brings to the table. Okay, so I'm going to do a deep dive. I'm going to run through some examples of updating. So we're going to take a look at the tool itself, and I'm going to show you the setup in P6, and then I'm going to show you how CAPPS works. So first and foremost, as I mentioned, we take advantage of coding in P6 that you probably are already doing in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so we can use project codes as well as activity codes to filter and give the user in CAPPS the right activities. So it could be a vendor, it could be a crew, it could be a discipline, okay, and that's what I'm going to show you. But it could be other codes as well, okay? It could be certain equipment, it could be geography, totally up to you, okay? But I'm just going to give you a flavor of how it works. And then, as I mentioned, approvals can either be done in the tool itself, or if you don't need a project manager to review the updates and you just want to send them into P6, you could do it that way. Okay, so you have both options there. Okay, so I think I've explained the tool. I'm going to go ahead and share. Let's see how I want to make sure I do this right. I'm going to share this screen, and I'm going to jump into showing you CAPPS just briefly. Then I'm going to show you P6, And then I'm going to do the updates in CAPPS, and we'll go back into P6. So I've logged into CAPPS. So as I mentioned, you have to log into the tool, and the login is controlled out of P6. Okay, so that makes it easier to administer as well, because you just give access to a user. You could deploy it, as I mentioned, to an engineering company or a contractor. You can do it for a month, 2 months, whatever the case may be, 6 months, whatever it needs to be. And then they do their updates. And then if they're finished, you could deploy that license to the next user. Okay, so it's very flexible in terms of how that can work. This is the most complicated layout in CAPPS. So let me explain what you're looking at and run through that. So we have all the different data elements that you might want to update. So tasks, so activities, resources, if you want to. You don't have to, and I'll show you how to change the screen depending on how you guys are using P6. Expenses, steps. So these are basically the 4 main areas that you can update in P6. Now, if you don't use all of them, that's fine. We don't have to show all of those because we have layouts like in P6, and I can simplify this. So maybe I only want to use activities, and maybe I want to filter by a certain company. So engineering X, for example, company. Okay, so I can certainly do that. And I can have multiple layouts. So I can have tasks only. I can have tasks, resource, steps, expenses. So I can have a variety of different things here. And I can look at this layout, and this layout has changed what's going to be available on the screen. Okay, so now I've made it more simple. So you can control what you're actually going to use in CAPPS, and it can vary by the project that you're doing that on. Okay, so for one client, maybe they only want dates. Another client may prefer to have dates and resources and expenses and steps. Okay, so that's why you can mix and match as you need to. And filters are going to be inside these layouts as well. Okay, so you can do that very, very easily and control what you're looking at. Now, before I go to the simple view, I'm going to go back to the all tabs just to explain a little bit more some of the functionality. And then we'll jump into doing some updates. So we tried to make the way that you use this tool very simple. So I can control the fields that I'm using. So we've exposed certain fields that most of our clients want for updating. So some are actually going to be read-only, like project baseline finish, project baseline start. Those would be read-only. But the start and finish date would be editable, okay, like you're seeing here. So we've got these as editable, okay. Now, if you don't want those fields on the screen, that's all right. You just turn them off as you've seen here, or I can turn them back on, which brings them into the layout. Okay, so we've tried to make that very simple. And if I don't like the positioning, I can drag and drop and, oops, sorry, there we go. Move them over. Okay, so this is very easy to administer. And you can see that we also have the ability to filter on these different fields. So that's what this little funnel lets you do. So very, very easy to put a filter on here for a particular vendor. In this example, this is the vendor activity code. Okay, so that engineering X one I mentioned a minute ago, I can turn that on. I can get more than one. Okay, so there's a variety of ways you can do this. And you can apply it, and then you've got your filter. Okay, so very easy to use. You don't need to be a P6 expert to get these sorts of filters turned on. And you can always create them and deploy them for somebody. So that's another thing that you can do. Okay, so we tried to make it easy for a user to work with. And if this is the layout that I want to use repeatedly, I can go to the configuration and I can give it a new name. Okay, I'll just call it demo. And I can save that as a new layout. Okay, so very simple to work with, tabular format, and easy to configure the screen so that we're seeing what we need to see appropriately. Now, before I start doing updates in CAPPS, let me just show you how the data actually got in to the CAPPS window. Okay. Oops. So let me. Looks like I logged out. Just a second here. Come on, P6. Oh, there it goes. It's just hidden behind. Sorry about that. Get this off my screen. There we go. That's better. All right. So let me explain what we were looking at in CAPPS and how it got into that window. So the first thing is this is a multi-user, multi-project kind of software. So if I have Engineering X company working on multiple projects, I don't have to update only one at a time. Okay, I can certainly give them all their projects in one window, which is what we were seeing in CAPPS, regardless of how many projects they're assigned to. Okay, so that's the first thing to understand. Now, you don't have to use CAPPS with every project. You can choose if you're going to use it on some and not others for whatever reason that would be. Okay, so that's what this is saying. Yes, we're going to use these projects in CAPPS. And then we're going to be able to set up how we're going to do the updating. So let me go to another layout in my project level just to explain that. So we have clients who use it different ways. Sometimes they have a person who's going to do all the updating for the whole project. So it could be a project manager who's going to do the updating because they're having the meetings with the engineers, the contractors executing the work. They're going to do the updates, but they're going to push those into P6 so the P6 scheduling expert can review them. Okay, so that could be the way that you do it in your group. So in this example, I would have a project manager who's doing all the updates and maybe another one who's approving them. You might even have a reviewer and then an approver. Okay, so we've tried to accommodate that complexity if you have that. Now, that's not always the way that you might have it. You might actually have, rather than one submitter, one approver, one reviewer, you may actually have someone who's submitting only a handful of the activities. So it could be by WBS. So you might have a project management group that's in charge of the project controls. You might have different folks who are going to contribute to this civil turbine work, civil reactor work. Okay, so that's what we're trying to show here. Once you're in a WBS layer, you may have different people who are going to be doing the updates. So that's fine, totally fine. We can accommodate that. And we're using just something simple that you're probably using already for tagging and bagging the activities with different reviewers, approvers, vendors, and crews. Okay, so you can do it whatever way makes sense for your projects. So in this example, I keep mentioning the Engineering X group that's doing some of our engineering work. And they're not doing all of the civil turbine area, they're just doing a portion of it. Okay, so that's fine. You tag the activities appropriately, and that is how we're going to filter them over in CAPPS. So not only do we have the vendor in this example, we went one layer deeper to the crew or the discipline, just kind of depending on how you do that. So we just used one activity code here to tag disciplines and crews for the job site versus the office work. Okay. So again, this is food for thought. You don't have to do it this way, but this is just the example we've laid out. Okay, so that's what we were looking at over in CAPPS. So we were looking at not only the work for Engineering X group on the first project, but they might be working on many projects. Okay, so we can certainly see whether they're working on project 2, which they are, and whether they're working on project 3, which they are. Okay, so we can look at multiple projects at once up in CAPPS. So you can sit down with them and do one project at a time updating, or multiple projects, completely as you wish. Now, if you deployed to them a license, right, when they logged in, they could do all the updates for all the projects that they're doing for you. Okay, so this can be really fantastic in terms of a very collaborative approach on getting the updates done. Okay, in a simple way. They don't need to be P6 experts. Okay, so that's a key thing. So of course you could also have a layout that's already set up, so you can see Engineering X different work, okay, depending on how they're going to update it. So they might have a PM that updates part of the project, or a discipline lead that does part of the project. Again, very flexible to do it whatever way makes sense. Okay, so this is a layout that's pretty similar to how it looks up in CAPPS as well. Okay, by WBS. And then with a filter, you could have a look ahead filter for what's coming up in this example, 120 days, just because it's a demo database. We don't work in it that often. So for your regular work, you'd probably have a 30 to 60 day window, depending on how often you're updating. Okay, so let's just go to the layout that we're going to use when we actually get the updates, and just have that ready. Okay, so this is a layout that we would use as the recipient in P6 of the updates. So this lets me know that the last round of updates, everything was approved, and the last round of updates was in December. Okay, so again, this is a demo database. We don't edit it that often. So you typically have a filter on here for the submissions. So in this case, the last 4 weeks. In my case, I put it to 6 months, but let's put it to something a little bit more realistic. So let's say in the last 2 weeks. Okay, that's more realistic. And then you'll see this is kind of the window where you're waiting for the updates to come in. So I'm going to save that. Let's take a look at doing some updates and actually submitting them. Okay, so we'll start with a simple update. I'll just update some activities, and I'll send them in, and then we can touch on what happens in P6, and then what the user sees in CAPPS. And then I'll go into a little bit more complicated updating with resources, expenses, and steps. So let's start with doing a little bit deeper dive on what we're looking at. So we're looking at the most complicated layout right now. We've got the all the different fields on this screen. I'm going to go to the most simple layout. Again, we just looked at that a minute ago. And start with the simplest, and then I'll go to the more complicated. So in this layout, I've got a lot of the fields off the screen that I don't necessarily need. So I've got the activity ID, the description, I've got that vendor code, and you can see it's filtered on Engineering X only. Okay. And I could filter their crews, their disciplines if I wanted to, but right now I'm seeing all of them. Now you notice that this activity code actually is a pick list. So not only can I see an activity code and make it read-only, but I can expose an activity code and ask it to be editable. So in this case, I could actually say this is not being done by crew 1, that's not quite right. And I might actually want to switch it to a different code, in this case, discipline. Okay, so we allow the editing of activity codes, and it's in the configuration when you set up the software, whether you want certain codes to be editable or not. Now, you can see if the activity is critical. So this is important when you're doing the updates, when you're having the conversation with them. If they've started the activity and they were supposed to be finished, again, this is demo data, it's a little old, they should have been done a few months ago, and it's critical. So you know that this is an important activity, and we better talk to them about what the heck is going on. Why are they running so late? Okay, so that's important information. Now we've also shown you whether it's started or not. Okay, so that's a field that you should be familiar with in P6. And you can see here it started, but this just gives you a quick visual. Not only that, you can filter on it very quickly. So you can filter on in progress and not started very quickly by using that. Okay, now you can also filter on any of these: critical, near critical, not critical. Okay, so you can filter on any of these as well, so that you make sure you're having those conversations when you're doing your update. So you could use this in a meeting. If you're sitting down with engineering X company, you can use this in a meeting. They can say, okay, yeah, we started that. We finished that. Yes, we were late, so we just finished it maybe a few weeks ago. So you can put that update in, and you can put a note in here as well. So this is the way we did this to try and minimize the real estate requirements so that you could use this on a tablet if you wanted to, was we actually put two fields in one here. Okay, we put the short user-defined note, and we also have a notebook here. So we kind of used two slots in one. So we can say we were late, and then we can have a longer note here when they're telling you what happened. We are going to need a change order. Oops, if I could type properly. Order. We were impacted. So you can take a proper note. You can put your initials, the date, whatever method you're comfortable or used to make sure that you're recording things correctly in P6. Okay, so that we're getting that audit trail. So that's one update right there that we did. So we just finished an activity. Now, you can see that there was already a green check mark here. So that's letting me know that the last time that this was submitted, it got approved. Either it got approved all the way through the process. So in P6, it was approved. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. Okay, so this is just letting the person who's doing the updating know what happened with the previous round of updates. And you can see here there was a question. It's like a yield sign. So it wasn't rejected, but there was some sort of question about it. And likely a note that was put in questioning something related to this. So we have three different values in there to show you what's going on with the approval process into P6. Let's look at this next activity. So this one's already started. It was supposed to be finished. Right now it's saying there's 30 days still to go, and our percent complete is not doing that great. So we can certainly update where we're at on this. So maybe we're progressing and we've got 80 hours left to go on that activity. Okay. So that's one way we can update it. So you could also update percent complete. Right now, the setting in the system is I'm going to use remaining duration. And I'm going to let the percent complete be calculated by P6 using P6's functionality. So I updated that one. And maybe I'm going to start one of these ones coming up. Okay, so this one was supposed to start next week, or in a few weeks, I should say, but maybe we already got started on it this week. So 3 examples of updates here, and I can put a remaining duration. So it's, let's say we have 20, let's say we're gonna go along on this 40 days is what we're expecting. Okay, so this is going to be an extension on this activity. So that might be all the updating that I want to do on this round. So I can certainly save the progress, which sends it into the CAPPS approver zone if I'm using that. It also sends it into P6 so the scheduler can see that the updates are being done. Okay. Now, before I do that, I'm just going to pop over to the other screen that we have in here. So this screen is trying to give the user of CAPPS some information about how these updates are progressing. So let me just go ahead and filter. Just a sec here. Let me filter on the vendor. The vendor is there. Oh, it's right here. Sorry, I didn't notice it. And I'm just going to filter it on Engineering X. Okay, just so I have the same set of activities. So this is another screen that will help us start to see the variances in the activities. So some of my activities are doing better. And this is a rough calculation that we're doing in CAPPS. Okay, so some are doing worse, as we saw. Some are trending late. So I can see those right here, and I can also filter on them so that I can get an idea of how I'm doing on these updates. Okay, so this may not match exactly what P6 calculates, but it's a good estimation for the user that's doing the updates, just to see, cross-check their work. And so that's why we've got this screen in there. Okay, so this screen doesn't not go away. It stays all in CAPPS all the time. Okay, so let's keep it simple. Let's save those few updates. And this is the screen that you get when it's been able to send it into P6. So I can jump into P6 and I can refresh what I'm seeing, and we'll take a look at those 3 updates. Okay, so what we tried to do here was give it to the P6 folks in a way that they're used to. So you don't have to go into P6 Web. You don't have to work in other parts of P6. You just have filters and layouts, things that you're very used to. Okay. So let me just jump on the questions here. Okay, so how long is a near critical activity? So that is a configuration setup. So you can have it set up the way that makes sense for your projects in there. Okay, so it's configurable. And the progress percent complete, again, that is using whatever you've got in P6. So if you're using duration based, that's what it's going to show. If you're using activity unit based, that's what it'll show. If you're using physical based, that's what it'll show. So it depends on the activity and what you've set inside of P6. Okay, so let's see what we've actually received from that simple update. So the date updates. Okay, so we updated 3 activities. They've been submitted. Okay, so this is the status of them. So if I logged back in to CAPPS, I would see that they're submitted. So let me go ahead and log back in. And I'll go back to the simple tab, just to start there, and then we'll go into a little bit deeper example. Okay. Okay. So those 3 activities that I just submitted, you can see they have this little eye, blue eye, letting you know that they've been submitted, but they haven't been approved, they haven't been reviewed. Okay, so that's what where that's coming from. It's from this submitted status. Okay, so that helps the person doing the updates know that they haven't received any feedback yet from the scheduler. Okay, so the scheduler hasn't had a chance to look at them yet. That's what that's telling them. So again, we tried to make the communication of what's going on with the update very, very transparent to the CAPPS user. Okay, you're not always in the same office. You're not even always in the same country as the person you're working with. So we just wanted to make it as simple and collaborative as possible. Okay, so let's just look at the updates. So we know that one of the activities was in progress. One of them got completed, and one of them was also in progress. Sorry, this layout does this weird thing to me. Sorry, let me just get them back. There you go. So let's look at what information CAPPS provides to the P6 user so they can see whether or not they're going to approve these. Okay, so approving these in P6 and not using an approval in CAPPS, which you certainly can or can't do, it's totally your call, is going to be setting it to approved. Okay, that's how we're going to approve it. Under review is the yield sign, meaning I'm looking at it, but I had some questions, is likely what it's going to be. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that. And if I don't approve it, then it's basically going to be rejected. Okay, so that's another status that I have. So I can reject. So I have 3 different choices, essentially, as the P6 user as to what I want to do with this. Okay. 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 So let's take a look at what we're seeing. Okay. So I see another question. Do you have an idea of what the critical path is going to be after the updates? So that is a good question. So there's not really an easy way to do that until you actually accept the updates and reschedule. Now, let me touch on that. I'll actually approve some of these and then we can touch on that a little bit further. Okay. Okay, so this is why we have these extra fields inside the system so that we have what was submitted and we can see what's going on that. Okay, but it is a challenging one, is to see what the new critical path is going to be after these updates have taken place. Okay, so let me move through these fields and then we can talk about what we're seeing. So you can see here we have what's been submitted from CAPPS, what's been accepted, or what the current P6% complete is. Okay, so we've got that. I'm showing the column as to whether or not we have steps because we're going to look at those in the next update. Okay, so we're going to see what's going on with steps in the next update. So for this update, I just did the dates. Now, we have the notes. So as I mentioned, we have 2 notes. We have a simple note, plus we have a notebook. So I'm going to open up the details. And we have the notebook as well. Okay, so this notebook, as you can see, is going to be identifying when the update took place and what was written. So you can see the note is there. So we got 2 layers of notes coming to us from the submitter. Again, just taking advantage of P6 base functionality. I can see when the update took place, and of course that's what I'm filtering on. So I can, every morning, I can open up this layout, I can see what submissions have come my way. It could be from one user, it could be by 5 different people submitting updates. Totally up to you. Okay, let's see what else. Let's scroll over a bit more. Okay, so then here we've got the start dates that have been submitted in CAPPS and the finish dates that have been submitted in CAPPS and that variance flag that I was mentioning. Okay, so this doesn't give you whether it's going to change the critical path, but if I had the float right here on the screen next to it, that would give me at least a bit of a hint right away. Okay, now this is letting me know that I'm starting early. A blue flag is good, and they didn't submit a finish, so I don't have a bit of a guess on that. But on this one, I'm finishing quite a bit later. Okay, so this is in hours. Okay, so you've got to know that P6 does everything in hours, so we're using hours in these calculations. But it's letting me know that I am definitely late. Now, if I had the float next to this, this would give me a clue what's going on. Okay, so it's not a perfect calculation, but it is a good indicator before you accept and before you reschedule. Okay, that we've got there. This is letting us know what's going on with the duration. So it's calculating the new duration, and we can see that some of those activities we were quite a bit longer on. Okay, so again, this is giving us a good hint before we actually accept it. Now, I didn't use the suspend and resume, but we do expose that field. So if people do need to put something on hold, I could have done that. We also do expose the expected finish. So expected finish sets an end date on the activity, and it sets a constraint. So if that's how you do your updating, you can use that. I did not do that in this example. And then I can get into labor units from the resources and steps and expenses. Okay, so we'll touch on these fields in the next round of updating. Okay, so now as the person receiving all this data, I have to do something with it. I can ask them some questions. Okay, so I could say, I got to look at this. One, I might say this looks good. Sorry, it's just popping to the other screen. This one looks good, so I can approve that. And this one doesn't look good at all. Something's not right. I don't think it's right, and I can reject it. Now, it's a good idea not just to reject or review something. It's a good idea to give them a note. Okay, so I'm putting in a note here. This looks like the date, the end start date is wrong. Okay, whatever the case may be, reject it. So I rejected this one, so I need to say why. Okay, so why did I reject this? Again, we would want to put in a proper message here, why I think it's not, something's wrong here. Please review dates, sorry, and resubmit. Whoops, sorry, bad typing, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to do there, okay? So that I can communicate with the person who did the updates, and they can see all that. Now, I'm not done yet. So now I actually have to tell CAPPS, P6 calculator, which is embedded in CAPPS, that I've done all the review, and I need to actually accept what's been put in. So the way that I do that is I just set this field on the project level, and I say, go ahead and basically run through all the approvals, rejections, reviews, all that good stuff, and actually do them for all the projects I've got open. Now, I didn't update that many things. I probably could have just done the one I updated, but this gives you the idea of how you can use this on many projects at once. Okay, so this is actually running basically an algorithm that takes all the data and puts it in the right slots in P6. So if I accepted a start date, it will take that actual start date and put it in to the actual start date. If I accepted a finish date, it would take that and put it in the finish date. If I did resources, expenses, etc., all that would get updated. Okay. So this could take a minute or two, just depending on how many things it's got to do. So it will run through and do its work. And when it's done, it should set this to pass. So it's go to tell it to go ahead and do it. It's a pass if everything went fine. It could fail if we got something in that makes no sense. So we do have some controllers in CAPPS to say you can't put a finish date before a start date, things of that nature. But once in a while, there could be something that makes no sense that we can't, that would break a business rule in P6. And that would be something that could be a fail and an error message. Okay. Okay, so this is taking a little bit more time than I was hoping. I probably should have just done the one project, but we'll let it keep doing its thing and I'll come back to it in a second. So what's going to happen once it runs through is it's going to update these little indicators here, but we'll also see the note from the reviewer. And the notes from the reviewer go inside of this slot. So everything related to approvals and the review is in this tab. That's why it's always on the screen. Okay. Okay, so that's what's going to happen so that the user gets the feedback of what's going on. Okay, so let's just see if it's been able to succeed. Yeah, okay. I don't know why it's taking so long. Okay, well, we'll let it do its thing and we'll go into the next update cycle. And we'll refresh it and hopefully we'll see those changes on the screen. So let's go into a little bit more complicated updating. So something that's got tasks, resources, steps, expenses, just so you can see something that's a bit more elaborate if your team uses those pieces of data. Okay. So now I've got tasks, resources, expenses, and steps on the screen. Now, there's two tabs I've asked it not to show in this layout, and one is the predecessor list and one is the successor list. So those are informational only. Now, those, I'll come back to those after I do this next update. So let's go back to the activities. And in this layout, I've got this little navigator area as well. So this lets me navigate to the different parts of the data that this activity has. So this one is a good example. Not only do I have activity data, but I have expense data and I have steps data, and resource data. I made a mistake there. So I've got resource data, expense data, steps data, and of course I've got activity data, which they all have. Okay. Another quick question looks like came in. Does the whole team have to have access to P6 and CAPPS? No, not at all. So your P6 users can have both if they wish, or they can just have P6. And then the CAPPS users may never even log into P6. So they're just users of CAPPS. That's typically how it's deployed. So no, they don't need to have both licenses. They don't need to have access to both. So what we use is what's called the P6 API to access the P6 data into the format that CAPPS uses. Okay, so we do buy a P6 API for each CAPPS user. Okay, but they don't need to log in to P6 at all. They just work in CAPPS only. Okay, and then whether you give your P6 users access to CAPPS as well, that's up to you. Now, in that scenario, if you do want to give them access to it, that's fine. All you need to buy is the CAPPS license because a P6 user, full P6 user, gets API. So you just need to add on the CAPPS license. Okay. Okay. So let's do a little bit more complicated updating. Okay, so let's go on an activity that's been started and let's go and update some of their resources, some of their steps, And let's go on an activity that hasn't been started, and we'll start it. We'll update their resources and their expenses. So I'll just work with these two from my first project and my work package number 1. Okay, so I'll just use these two as an example. So I can update either going to the tab, or I can navigate from the task to the tab just by using this button. So let's start with this first one here. It's civil work, review and approve. It's a little backwards. Let's start with this one. How about that? So we'll start with this one. So release document, release to document control. Okay. So I can go ahead and click on the icon for the resources. So it navigates to the resource window, plus it navigates to the activity. So the layout in here could be completely different activities than what I'm looking at on the first tab. Okay. Now, this activity may or may not be started. So in this case, you can see it hasn't started yet. It's got the green icon. It's not the green and blue icon. So this one hasn't started yet. So if I want to start it, I can click on the hyperlink and start the activity. And I can say when that started. Okay, so this is back in June 2021. I can say that it just started this week. And if I need to actually update the hours, you can do that as well. Okay, so if not, by default, it's going to set it to first thing in the morning. So once I've started that activity, I can update the actual units. So I can't edit the budget. The budget is there for information, but I can update the actual units. So I might have done 100 hours. The computer tries to recalculate the estimate to complete if it can, but I can certainly also amend that or edit that. So I might have done 100 hours and I know I still have another 100. Okay. So this percent complete is a rough estimate on the units percent complete based on what I've put in this screen. Okay. So I can navigate back to the activity if I wish, and you can see that my start date is working in both windows. I can then go to my expenses. Okay. Now I might be the person who only updates expenses, in which case I could only have this tab and I just work in this one screen. Okay. So I'm giving you the most complicated method, bouncing back and forth, but it doesn't have to be that way. Okay. So it depends on how your group uses P6. So similar to resources, I can update the actual and the estimate to complete is attempting to recalculate, but again, I can reforecast that. And maybe I'm going to be better on the expenses and I can forecast that I'm going to be under, which would be great. Okay. So that's how I can bounce back and forth between those two items, and I can go right into the steps as well. So again, depending on how you deploy this, maybe I'm the person who only updates the steps. So we had a client who used this for their engineering work packages, and the engineering lead, the discipline lead, only updated steps. So they would start an activity, and then they would say what's going on with the different issued for construction, issued for information, issued for review. So they could update the steps. Okay. So usually you do issued for information first, issued for construction next. So it can either be completed or it could just be in progress. Okay. So it depends on your situation. Maybe we've only started, but we haven't quite got it done. Okay, so that's the way you would update the steps. Now, some of you might know that with steps, you can use physical percent complete, and this can update the physical percent complete in P6 using these weighted steps inside of here. Okay, that's how you can use that. So once I've done my updates, I can do more updates, but I think for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and submit this, and we'll bounce back here. Hopefully this thing is working. It doesn't. Let me see if it actually did finish. Yeah, okay, something definitely is not working right now. So I'll just explain what it would look like. So I've just submitted this again, so I'm going to refresh this. And the submittal will be the second round of submittals. Okay, so let me just see, I see another question. Does CAPPS also have API for third-party softwares, i.e. update automatically actual hours from timesheets from Excel? No, we didn't build CAPPS to work that way. But what I would say is you might want to look at our P6 loader, because we've automated that sort of thing for loading data from other systems with P6 loader. And then the other thing we've done programming of integrations. So that would be a better method to look at it using one of our other tools. So P6 loader would probably be more appropriate. So that would be a better way to go. Okay, so this would be the second round of updates that came through. So let me scroll over, and I can even look at the resources down on the bottom, but let me just scroll over to see the activity that just came in on these updates. So here we have 2 activity steps were updated. Here we have some resource updates. Now that's not today's, so let me just make sure that my last submit went through. Let me just make sure. Yeah, looks like it went through. And I'll return to the update form. And let me just refresh P6. But it definitely looks like something's maybe not running quite right on the server. So let me explain what it looks like. So here you get the idea. Is it'll let you know which activities were updated. Again, we're just using basic features inside of P6 to show you that. So let me scroll over and let me look at the one that I submitted. I should have taken note. I was too quick at submitting it. So here we go. This is the one that I did the update on the actual units. So this is letting me know that we received from CAPPS that we've used up 100 units. We've got 100 still to go. Now, when I submit the process to do the changes, to accept the changes, these fields are going to get updated in P6, the real fields, okay? So this is, again, giving me the information prior to accepting the submission. So that's on this. I think the steps, I did the same activity. So let's just go and look up here. Let's just give a bit more real estate. Yeah, so you can see here. So I had 2 updates on my steps. One is going to go to 100%. One is only going to go to 30%. And I could have put a note in. I just did not do that. Okay, so that would have been there. And you can see again when the last submission has taken place so that you have a good track record of what's going on. Okay. Now this is also the activity that I updated the expense. So I did all of it on the same activity. So here's my actual cost that was submitted, my estimate to complete that was submitted. And once I accept those, these are going to go into the real P6 fields. Okay. So if this was approved and I was good with this, I can set it to approved and run the utility to accept that. But for some reason, this doesn't seem to be working right now. So I can't show you that last piece. And then the same process would take place. So then the reviewer would see that they were approved or rejected or whatnot up in here, and they can continue to do their updating. Okay, so hopefully I've given you a flavor of what the tool looks like, how you can use it. The predecessor successor tabs, as I mentioned, are read only. They're informational so that the user can see the impact that they're having on activities. Okay, so this helps a user as well as a reviewer see that this activity has 72 days of float and whatnot. Okay, so again, they can filter on that so they have a better understanding. And this is letting them know, particularly the successors would be important. If the activity they're updating and it's being delayed, if it's going to have a ripple effect on on the upcoming work, the successor work. Okay, so that's why we've got that there. It's informational. Now, the last piece to touch on up in the deviations is we can actually put in information about whether or not we think we might need a change. Not only can you put it in a note, you can actually, we have some fields here inside of here, whether we need a change. So we've described it a deviation request. Now that is our nomenclature, it doesn't have to be yours. And as I mentioned, the approval information can be inside of here. Okay, so those are also pieces that we've got inside the software. Now that doesn't mean a change is approved. It means that you're highlighting to the P6 scheduler that we're probably going to have some changes in scope on that activity. Okay, so for the first 5 years after I graduated from engineering school, I worked in claims. And marking down changes are coming, what we think they're going to be, as soon as you know about them is hugely important. Okay, so this is not doing the change order paperwork. This is just starting to flag it as soon as you can. Okay, so I'm running over a little bit. Are there any other questions that are coming up right now that would be good for me to stay in the software before I just do a little wrap up here? Okay, so I think I'm going to get out of the software for now. If I need to, I can jump back in and I'll go back to the PowerPoint and start wrapping up. So hopefully you saw something that could be interesting for your group. The updating, of course, is always a challenging part of P6. You know, not only do you put a huge amount of effort to get a good schedule together, what would be a shame is to lose the ability to get that updated regularly and make it valuable for your group. Okay, so we've got a variety of different clients who've used this tool in its different forms and for different purposes. So I'm just going to touch on two real quick, and then we'll close out. So Petro Canada was actually our first launch client, and of course they're Suncor Energy now. They needed a tool to help their team at the different refineries be able to update the capital projects. And what they were finding was their P6 team was just so swamped with work that they couldn't rely on them to do all the updating. So their mandate was to update every 2 weeks the dates and every month at minimum the costs and the resources. Okay, so that was their mandate. So that's really how CAPPS started, so that they could do that. And they had different layouts, essentially. It wasn't quite the same user interface as it is now, but different layouts with costs and expenses, and a different layout for the biweeklies, which just gave them dates. Okay, so the key thing here was they had a much better idea on off-site tracking of deliverables coming from all over the world, which was really important because they had so many projects on the go. If they knew some equipment was going to be delayed, they might slot in a different project in that work area. So that was a big gain for them. So another one of our sort of older examples was Vico Canada, which is now CH2M. They used it for the engineering steps update. So I mentioned that a little bit earlier. But the key thing was they were having trouble really understanding when a package was going to be delivered to the site, so that they could execute the work. So they were really struggling with that forecasting. So by giving the engineering discipline lead the ability to do the updates, they were getting the work packages much quicker. And on average, it was saving a week of time on each work package. So that was on average. That's what they found. Okay, so some really huge potential wins here. We've got other users using it in projects around a whole country. Updates are coming in on a huge work program being done from different sites. So the PMs are doing all the updates at minimum every week so that they can update the program with costs every single month. And this is saving them huge amounts of time. So you saw how easy it was to use. So that was our objective, was to make it very easy, very collaborative, so that the updates can be done without being an expert. And the updates can be done if you have 10 minutes at the end of the day. You can get a few updates in and not worry about having to do them all at once. So the benefit to management is when they can see potential issues. So when the weekly updates started coming in for one of our clients, the managers could see the issues starting to creep in. So they were able to recalculate the critical path more often than once a month. So that can be a very, very big win. You could reorganize your schedule if you see that something is really going to start to impact that critical path. So that becomes a very big win. So I think you saw that it was pretty easy to see the updates, and we tried to give the users information about the impacts so that they're seeing that. Okay, they're not exactly what P6 is going to calculate, but they are a good leading indicator. So that was important for us. And then for resources, you can start to use resources. We have some clients that shied away from using resources, expenses, and steps because there was no easy way to update them. Okay, so you saw that we could deploy just the steps tab and just have a user update the steps. So they don't even need to know percent completes or any of that good stuff. They just need to know that their checklist is being achieved. Okay, so this really does change the dynamic of what you can do with P6. Okay, so if there are any questions that are coming to mind, go ahead and throw them in the chat or the questions room, and I'll tackle them as we close up here. So again, thank you for spending the last hour and a bit with us. Hopefully you saw something that Emerald can help your team with. And we've got a lot of tools. I mentioned the P6 loader could be a better option if you want data loaded in from Excel to P6. So we've got webinars coming up on that. Definitely look at that and join those. We've got other tools as well. So we've got P6 Scrubber, which helps you with dealing with XERs and XMLs. We've got our P6 QA tool, which helps you quality check what's in P6. We've got our P6 calculator, which is just like a wizard bag of great little functions inside of P6 with roll ups, roll downs, copying codes from a user code to a global code for mass reporting out in Power BI or Tableau, which we do through our P6 Reporter tool. So definitely check out some of our other webinars because we've got a lot of different tools to help make what you do in P6 better. So any questions? I think there's one more. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so let's just make sure I didn't miss any. So, okay, it wasn't a question. All right, so if you do have a question, definitely you can throw that out at us. You've got my information there. Donna can share her information in the chat. She might be closer to you. She's in the Philippines. So certainly you can reach out to Donna or you can reach out to me if you want to understand a bit more about this tool or any of the other tools we've got in our toolkit. We've got a lot of good case studies on our website, so you might find some information there as well. Okay, so I'll stay on for another minute. I'll stop the recording here.